Hello, and welcome to the Black Ponder. I'm Neil Trotter. Today, we're going to be talking about a staple in existentialism. This is a classic text. It is a good place to start if you're first learning about existentialism, and that is Jean-Paul Sartre's Nausea. Nausea is a novel, is a fictionalized journal about a man named Antoine or Antoine or Antoine. I don't really know how to pronounce that. I do know a girl with the same spelling of this name, and we call her Antoine. And I also know a guy who has this spelling name, and we call him Antoine. So we have multiple pronunciations where I'm from of this name, but I don't know how to correctly pronounce that in French. Maybe that's one of the correct pronunciations, but we're gonna stick to just calling him the main character. Okay, so this book is about a guy who's going through an existential crisis. That's what it seems to be about to me. And it's not just him going through an existential crisis. It's a few other people who are in the book who are major characters who are also going through existential crises. So it's kind of like an examination of what an existential crisis is and how to deal with it, pretty much, or the experience of it. What is an existential crisis, in case you're not fully aware of what it is? Well, I think to me what that is basically self-awareness to an extreme case. It's like hyper self-awareness. It's not like the self-awareness that you see, the Buddha doing, or like Buddhist monks or yogi, people who are self-aware but find balance in the self-awareness. They find calm. No, it's people whose reflection of who they are and what they've accomplished and where they stand in life, that reflection is taken to the extreme level. They relate what they've done and who they are as a person and where they stand. They relate that to what other people have done and their experience. And they compare themselves with other people, and they measure their worth based off that relation. And it's not just a relation with yourself and other people, it's also a relation with you and like the grand world, like the society, the world, the universe even. You start to like super reflect on that. Oh, I've done this, and I am this person, and this is all the things that I have accomplished. But based off of all the stuff that all these other people have accomplished who are kind of similar to me, what I've done really isn't that much of a thing, right? So do I really matter? It's very interesting, and it's also a very common human experience. We all go through it at some point in life. Human beings think on relative terms. We always think in terms of relationships, how we relate with other people. Sometimes we can take that too far, and it can become overwhelming if we're not thinking about it in a critical way, in an analytical way. Let's jump into some quotes, and I'll share with you some of the reflections that this man has basically while he's going through his existential crisis. This is one of his quotes that he has in one of his journal entries. It's a reflection that he has. Nothing happens while you live. The scenery changes, people come in and go out. That's all. There are no beginnings. Days are tacked onto days, without rhyme or reason, an interminable monotonous addition. From time to time, you make a semi-total. And what he's saying, like a semi-total, he's saying like, people say, oh, back in the day, oh man, remember that 5 years ago when I did this and this and this? Or like, man, 2012, that was a good year, wasn't it? That was a really good year. Man, last week was off the hook. Or, boy, did I hate yesterday. Yesterday really sucked. We make these semi-totals, right? The time of a flash. After that, the possession starts again. You begin to add up hours and days. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, April, May, June, 1924, 1925, 1926. I think what the main character is saying is that, we make up these significant happenings or these special time frames. We make these things up, but in reality, there are no really significant portions of time. Really, it's all just blended together, and there's really only one time, right? We break time into these chunks of significances, years, months, days, or whatever. And not just that, just like specific happenings like my birthday, that party I went to, that time when I was married. But in reality, that it all just blends together, and there's nothing really significant about each individual happening. That's living, but everything changes when you tell about life. It's a change no one notices. The proof is that people talk about true stories, as if there could possibly be true stories. Things happen one way and we tell about them in the opposite sense. You seem to start at the beginning. It was a fine autumn evening in 1922. I was a notary clerk in the Maromes, I guess that's a French city, and in reality you have started at the end. For us, the man is already the hero of the story. His moroseness are much more precious than ours. They are all gilded by the light of future passions. It was the night. The street was deserted. The phrase is cast out negligently. It seems superfluous, but we do not let ourselves be caught and we put it aside. This is a piece of information whose value we shall subsequently appreciate. And we feel that the hero has lived all the details of this night like annunciations. We forget that the future was not yet there. The man was walking in a night without forethought. A night which offered him a choice of dull, rich prizes. And he did not make his choice. I wanted the moments of my life to follow and order themselves like those of a life remembered. You might as well try and catch time by the tail. Pretty much he's saying, the main character is making a reflection saying that, hey, you know, when we talk about our lives and we talk about the significant parts of our lives, they're just dramatizations. They're just fictionalizations, right? We try to make them special, but in reality, they're not really special. We try to make them stand out, but they don't really stand out. You know, think of like, just an example, like a marriage, for example. You know, somebody gets married, they're like, oh, that was the greatest day of my life. The cake was delicious. The venue was so beautiful. I had all my family and friends and loved ones with me. That was such a great day. But was it really special? How many people have actually gotten married? Billions, right? If not trillions, right? Throughout the history of mankind. And what really makes your marriage special from any other marriage? Oh, the loved ones that I have with me, and that dress that I had and it was so pretty, or the suit and it was so handsome. The venue was so pretty. Oh, the sun was right at the right position just when the preacher said, you may kiss the bride, right? But these are fictions, these are dramatizations, right? We pay a fortune to make the marriage seem like it's special or significant. But really we're just creating this dramatization that isn't real. We're trying to make something special that in reality isn't special. This is his message, right? Do I necessarily think this myself? No. I think marriages are great, and I think they are kind of special, but I think this is what he would think. Here's another example of what I'm talking about in terms of like lying to yourself, making dramatizations of things that really aren't special. Here the main character is talking to an associate, and a very important character in the book, who he calls the self-taught man, right? And the main character is talking about how, people really don't matter. Nobody's really worth caring about. And his associate, the self-taught man, he debates with him. He's like, no, people do matter. And he says, it is true that all men deserve our admiration. It is difficult, very difficult to be a man. And the main character answers back, excuse me, but I am not quite sure of being a man. I never found it very difficult. It seemed to me that you had only to let yourself alone. The self-taught man laughs candidly, and his eyes stay wicked. You are too modest. In order to tolerate your condition, the human condition, you, as everybody else, need much courage. The next instant may be the moment of your death. You know it, and you can smile. Isn't that admirable? In your most insignificant actions, he adds sharply, there is an enormous amount of heroism. The self-taught man is noting the fact that, look, you can die at any moment. You can go outside and get run over by a car, or some random bullet can hit you, or all types of things can happen to you. You can die tomorrow, in an hour. It's true. This is a fact, right? And he's saying that despite that fact that it can happen, even though the chances of that happening, let's face it, are, not high. But I mean, that is a possibility. Human life is very frail. Bad things can happen to you in an instant. And the self-taught man is saying that despite of this knowledge that we have of that, we still continue to move forward. We still live, and we live life in a fruitful way. And that's very admirable of us. This is what the self-taught man is saying, right? But the main character hears him, and what he hears is a lie again. It's a fiction. It's something that we tell ourselves. Oftentimes you do hear that, like, you can die tomorrow, so you have to live your life till its fullest extent. And then when people do that, they're like, oh man, that's so admirable that he's doing that, because you could die tomorrow, but the fact that he's just living his life and finding so much meaning in his existence, that's admirable. But it's a lie again. It's like, this is just something that we tell ourselves to make ourselves feel better about the situation, because it's true that we could just be taken out tomorrow. I mean, that can happen, and that's a reality. That's a horrible reality. But we try to escape that reality by making these dramatizations. And when you start to reflect on that, or at least when this main character starts to reflect on it, he becomes sick. He becomes sick psychologically, or he even goes as far as saying, look, I'm getting sick to my soul. Right? That all I'm hearing is these lies. Reality is not anything special, yet we always lie and we pretend like things are great and grand, and there's all this meaning in life, but there's no meaning really. And as he continues to hear these dramatizations, it makes him sick to his soul. And this is what he refers to as this nausea. He's hearing that and he's just going, oh, come on, please stop it. Will you just stop? We know the reality. Stop pretending like it's anything different. Here's another reflection that the main character has. If anyone had asked me what existence was, I would have answered in good faith that it was nothing, simply an empty form which was added to external things, without changing anything in their nature. And then all of a sudden, there it was, clear as day, existence had suddenly unveiled itself. It had lost the harmless look of an abstract category. It was the very paste of things. This root was kneaded into existence, or rather the root, the park gates, the bench, the sparse grass, all that had vanished. The diversity of things, their individuality, were only an appearance, a veneer. This veneer had melted, living, soft, monstrous masses, all in disorder, naked, in a fruitful, obscene nakedness. So the main character is in a park, and he starts to come to this realization that the diversity of existence is an illusion, right? And basically everything is just the same. There's no real change. There's no real difference between that tree and that bench and that sidewalk and me and you. We're all just part of one existence, right? One thing. Diversity, change itself, is an illusion. Now, by no means is this realization anything new. This is huge in Eastern philosophy, right? Specifically Hinduism, with the idea of God being this essence, Brahman, and that everything is a part of God. And the reality is that we are all just part of this oneness. Change, diversity is an illusion. That's nothing new, right? Many people take this realization and find great joy in that. But there's other people like this main character, and there's a lot of people in general who have taken this realization and it makes them sick to their soul, really. It makes them upset. So I'm not actually an individual. My individuality doesn't matter. My individuality really is meaningless because I'm actually part of this oneness that is existence. To ask like what it means to exist, it's a meaningless question, right? It's kind of like asking, well, why does a triangle have 3 sides? Well, because that's what a triangle is. It's a triangle has 3 sides because that's what a triangle is, right? Why does 1 + 1 = 2? Well, that's kind of just how math works, right? 1 + 1 = 2 because that's how we have defined math as being. Similarly, why do we exist? Well, we exist because that's what we are. We are existence. There is no reason, there's no meaning why we exist. We exist because we exist. That's what we are, is existence. I understood the nausea. I possessed it. To tell the truth, I did not formulate my discoveries to myself, but I think it would be easy for me to put them in words now. The essential thing is contingency. I mean that one cannot define existence as necessity. To exist is simply to be there. Those who exist let themselves be encountered, but you can never deduce anything from them. I believe there are people who have understood this. Only they try to overcome this contingency by inventing a necessary causal being. But no necessary being can explain existence. Contingency is not a delusion, a probability which can be dissipated. It is the absolute, consequently, the perfect free gift. All is free. This park, this city, and myself. When you realize that, it turns your heart upside down and everything begins to float. Here is the nausea. Here there is what those bastards try to hide from themselves with their idea of their rights. But what a poor lie. No one has any rights. They are entirely free. Like other men, they cannot succeed in the feeling superfluous. And in themselves, secretly there is superfluous. That is to say, amorphous, vague, and sad. So I would think that this main character would view the Eastern philosophical version of this realization again as a dramatization, as essentially a lie to make us feel special. Oh, we're divine because we're part of one ultimate existence. That is a delusion, right? This is what he would say. And it makes this person sick when he comes to the realization that it is a delusion. So is that it? Is there like no hope? Are we just stuck in this nausea of existence being meaningless? And oh well, what the hell? I'm just stuck, and that's how it is. The hell with life, right? But no, the main character does come with some hope, right? He does figure out a way to deal with this nausea. The main character goes to this museum and he checks out this painting of this famous figure in history who's done a lot and left a really big legacy. And this is what he says. Then I realized what separated us, that historical figure and the main character. What I thought about him could not reach him. It was psychology, the kind they write about in books, but his judgment went through me like a sword and questioned my very right to exist. And it was true. I had always realized it. I hadn't the right to exist. I had appeared by chance. I existed like a stone, a plant, or a microbe. My life put out feelers towards small pleasures in every direction. Sometimes it sent out vague signals. At other times, I felt nothing more than a harmless buzzing. But for this handsome, faultless man, now dead, for Jean Picome, son of the Picome of the Defense Nationale, I probably butchered the pronunciation of that, it had been entirely different matter. The beating of his heart and the mute rumblings of his organs, in his case, assumed the form of rights to be instantly obeyed. For a right is nothing more than the other aspect of duty. His extraordinary success could never have surprised him. He never told himself he was happy, and while he was enjoying himself, he must have done so with moderation, saying, "This is my refreshment." Thus, pleasure itself also becomes a right, lost its aggressive futility. He would say how easy and how difficult it is to do one's duty. He had never looked any further into himself. He was a leader. So to overcome the nausea, to at least deal with it, you need to become a leader of your own existence, right? Like the way this famous figure, historical figure did in the painting. He left a legacy, right? He achieved so much and he became so great. And it's not that his life wasn't a fiction. It was a fiction in the main character's point of view, but it was a fiction that he took charge of, the historical figure. He wrote his own fiction. He was the author of his own dramatization. And when we take ownership of the drama that is our life, we both become aware that ultimately life is meaningless, but we take ownership of this meaninglessness, then we can overcome the nausea. Check out this quote. In this reflection, the main character is reflecting on a song that he particularly likes, that he's reflecting on the writer of that song. And this is what he says about the writer of the song. He made it. He had troubles. Everything didn't work out for him the way it should have. Bills to pay. And then there surely must have been a woman somewhere who wasn't thinking about him the way he would have liked her to. And then there was a terrible heat wave which turned men into pools of melting fat. There is nothing pretty or glorious in all that. But when I hear the sound and I think that that man made it, I find this suffering and sweat moving. He was lucky. He couldn't have realized it. He must have thought, with a little luck, this thing will bring in $50. Well, this is the first time in years that a man has seemed moving to me. The man wrote a song, a dramatization about his experience, but he became the author of that dramatization. He himself became the leader of that dramatization. Then the main character starts to think about himself. Couldn't I try another type of book? I don't quite know which kind, but you would have to guess, behind the printed words, behind the pages, as something which would not exist, which would be above existence, a story for example, something that could never happen, an adventure. It would have to be beautiful and hard to steal and make people ashamed of their existence. A book, a novel, and there would be people who would read this book and say, Anthony or Quentin wrote it, a red-headed man who hung around cafes. A book. Naturally, at first it would only be a troublesome, tiring work. It wouldn't stop me from existing or feeling that I exist. But a time would come when the book would be written, when it would be behind me, and I think that a little of its clarity might fall over my past. Then, perhaps, because of it, I could remember my life without repugnance. So he comes to the realization that you can overcome the nausea, again, by being the leader of your own existence, by being the author of your traumatization. In his mind, life is meaningless, and you can't escape that. But you can deal with the meaninglessness by writing your own stories. And what that means is being aware of the fiction of living and not feeling guilty about it, but taking control of it. Understanding that it is fiction and then riding the wave of that fiction. But not just riding the wave, controlling it and taking advantage of it, leaving a legacy, defining who you are despite the meaninglessness through the fiction that is your life. It's very interesting, it really is. I think that Sartre had some good points. I don't necessarily agree with that point of view per se, but I do know people do experience existential crises all the time, and it is a very interesting examination of a very normal experience that happens to most every human being. So check it out. This is Jean-Paul Sartre's Nausea. You have been watching The Black Ponder. Tune in next time for more philosophical thought.